Hey everyone, it's good to be here. Lofty had to step away for a second, but we're going to be back in a second talking about The Devil's Backbone, which ended up being really good. Uh, so, let me see. Without further ado, I think I will just play our intro here, and then we can get going. Guess a little bit of background on me as a film critic, bit of a film school dropout for people who haven't been to the channel before. More of a background in literary work. Uh, let's see, on the stream element spot. Yeah, generally like writing and film itself. My focus is usually on plot, but I tend to like a lot about movies in general. As I said, film school dropout, so that's something. But a big blind spot for me has always been horror. I've never been somebody who's had a big interest in it. I like horror as a continuation of what I consider sort of the tradition of folk tales or urban legends, that sort of thing. Those horror is sort of that continuing of morality through something scary like that. Uh, oh hey, yeah. Let's see. Are you back? No, not quite. But yeah, horror is something that I need to get into more because there's a lot of good films that I've overlooked because of my lack of interest in it. And it's not necessarily because horror itself is bad. It's because horror. Okay, here we go. Hey, welcome back.
Hey,
Welcome to the
sorry.
stream.
Yep.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, as I was saying, like horror. It's not that it's bad. It's just that a lot of examples of modern horror is really bad. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
They're great options. I'd almost consider some stuff in the Northman horror, and obviously his other films were really
Yep.
great. The Witch is good horror. So is the Lighthouse. I'd consider the Lighthouse horror, even if it's
Yep.
more psychological. And I
Definitely.
guess anything A24 puts out.
Yeah, a
But,
lot of the stuff they put out.
yeah.
Well, if you're trying to get into horror and you're like, oh, what should I watch? And if you don't have a friend that's really, really into horror, you might have a hard time like breaking into the genre because a lot of the times people will recommend stuff like, oh, you got to see The Conjuring, or you have to see Insidious, or
Mm,
you have to
yeah.
see the Saw franchise, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm not a huge fan of these. But then you don't know
Yeah.
about stuff like, this one, like The Devil's Backbone, or The Lighthouse, right? So you have to
Yeah.
have a friend that can like show you the ropes almost.
Yeah, the Lighthouse is maybe the big exception for me with horror, just because it's
Yeah.
it's something else. It's arty, really. But yeah, I would agree. Obviously, the big recommendations you usually get are like, oh, you should watch Friday the 13th. I'm like, well, that's a different kind of horror than maybe what I'd like.
Yeah.
But who knows? It's a classic for a reason. Uh, and I did watch Halloween to start this series, and that was something.
Oh.
It's well done. It's only been 2 months actually. It still blows my mind. 2.5, I guess, but it blows my
For
mind. It's been that long
since what? Since the
since I actually started this channel
Oh my god.
officially,
Okay.
fully.
Yeah, guys, sub to this guy.
Yeah.
We gotta support the community here. I love when people are trying to discuss things that are a little bit outside the mainstream. So this is
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I kind of started as a place to have people come together and talk about film without kind of getting too far into the weeds of
Yeah.
negativity or the political stuff, because I think that really ruins a lot of conversation. This I don't know, sector, so to speak. I think it's good to kind of approach it as an art form, like it is, rather than, I don't know, a
Right.
vector for converting people to an ideology. I don't know.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends.
It depends. It depends. It does depend. And I think a good film will kind of convince you of its position by just being a good movie. So that's a good way of highlighting that kind of thing too. But okay, The Devil's Backbone. So you're the one who suggested this to me. Good, good choice here. Good starting point for me. I've
Good.
been into gothic novels for a while. I think Frankenstein obviously is one of those. Specifically more Southern Gothic, I guess. But
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's perfect because, well, I'll get into it eventually, but Frankenstein will come up in this conversation, I'm sure. I'll
Oh
get into
yeah.
it.
I
Yeah.
could see why Del Toro considers this his first real film. I was
Yeah,
reading a bit about his experience with the Weinstein Company, and I kind of got angry reading about
of
that.
course.
Yeah.
Just like
Um,
they why? Because they chopped down his edit?
yeah, yeah. He's. It was funny. I read some anecdote from him where he's talking about how at the same time his father was kidnapped in Mexico, I
Uh-huh.
believe, and he said that the movie thing was more traumatic because at least the kidnapping had rules to it.
Right.
The, whereas this was not necessarily the case at all.
Oh
Um,
my god.
so yeah, but yeah, no, this is a great entry point for horror. So yeah, definitely. The general plot, I guess we could break down if you'd like. Um,
Yeah, it's a tricky well,
it is a little
first
tricky
of
because
all, I think we should do first is if people are familiar with Del Toro's Pinocchio, which came out this year, that's a good starting point because essentially what he did with Pinocchio, and people who don't know who Del Toro is or haven't seen this movie and Pan's Labyrinth, are kind of going into that blind, and they're like unaware of his obsession with like the Spanish Civil War and fascism and all that stuff.
yeah,
And he's been doing this for 20 years or more than that, 30 years, I think.
yeah, this was his.
He's been exploring these themes for a long time.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
film itself was a student project originally that he envisioned, and then it kind
Hmm.
of got to go somewhere else, which is good. Um, it that the Spanish Civil War is something I don't really know a whole lot about, which is a little unfortunate for me because I looking into it's definitely sort of the start of that
Yeah.
European confrontation with fascism, I guess, and um, also very impactful for this sort of storytelling. It's
Yeah.
yeah, I
It,
mean this whole
it,
film is centered around it, really.
it, yeah, it's I don't know much about it either, but the the issue is it was overshadowed by like the World War, like the big war, right?
Yeah,
And so a lot of people are, very knowledgeable about World War II, but they might not know about this part of that kind of era, that decade, 1939, the end of the Spanish Civil War, and fascism took over, and I think lasted for about 30, 40 years until Franco died.
yeah,
I don't know much about it, but I know that it was a disaster. It was terrible, terrible time for the country.
yeah. It's and that ties in
To the
to
story.
the ghost aspect of it,
Yeah.
as the opening of the film discusses. Is like, what is a ghost? It's sort of like a
Yeah.
scar, almost like a memory of the past that lingers on. Uh,
Yeah,
it,
there's a really beautiful, what would you call that? Soliloquy or poem?
yeah, I
Um,
have I had it pulled up and then I I removed it. Uh,
yeah,
this
what is
is
a ghost? And here I have it.
oh okay, nice.
It's this is what plays at the beginning of the movie. It's just this little, like, you're supposed to contemplate on this as the movie's playing out, but it says, "What is a ghost? An emotion, a terrible moment condemned to repeat itself over and over. An instant of pain, perhaps, something dead which appears at times alive, a sentiment suspended in time like a blurry photograph, or an insect trapped in amber." And all of these like allegories and metaphors and symbolism kind of play into this idea of like a ghost. What is a ghost? And the film deals with all of these things, like the ghost of fascism, in or the ghost of um,
Yeah,
like a child, a traumatic moment that is. Well, we could talk about. We could talk about the. I guess we could talk about whether or not you think this was a real ghost story or not. Like, how did you interpret it?
I would actually say it probably is, if only
Yeah.
because of the moment towards the end when the boys are released
Hmm.
I won't not to explain too much yet,
Right. Right.
or get
Right.
into spoilers, but that moment really to me seems to really stink it. Which it could just be that kind of it's like a Spanish and Italian kind of what's it called, magical realism aspect to this film.
That's what it is. Yep.
Yeah,
Magical realism.
Yeah, that is what really stands out as far as this stuff goes. But
Yeah.
really, if we're going to talk about a ghost in a way, I'd say the bomb that lands in the middle of the
Hmm.
thing is just a focal point of everything. Really is it kind of the big symbol of it, and obviously the thing people know the most about this film, probably.
Yeah. So that there's this movie and Pinocchio as well deal with the dropping of like bombs on villages in
Mm,
during wartime. And in this movie, the bomb doesn't explode and is like rendered inert basically, and they just leave it there. They don't take it. They don't take it's in the middle of this village, this like small orphanage. And the whole movie it's just like kind of an like an oppressive like almost evil spirit in the center of this
yeah, it
orphanage.
and it's interesting because it came there at the exact same time that the initial tragic incident happened.
Yeah,
Um, so
exactly.
hmm. Maybe it's hard to talk about this without getting to spoilers. So maybe I'll just say spoilers now.
Yeah, we'll talk about spoilers, and then it's
Yeah,
an old movie, and
it's
none of these are like M Night Shyamalan spoilers. This is not
no,
that kind of movie. This is a metaphor. It's not really that big of a deal if you get spoiled.
yeah, exactly. It's more about the atmosphere and being pulled
Yeah,
into this world. Because it's just an orphanage in the middle of nowhere.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, okay. The film kind of centers around this orphanage. This boy came in. I believe his name's Carlos, right?
Carlos.
Yes, Carlos. He's brought in. It's like, oh, you'll be staying here for just a little bit. Obviously, implying his father's been
Hmm.
killed, and people don't know, or he doesn't know, but I think he kind of knows.
Right.
um, and then you get to learn that there's a bunch of stuff going on here, interpersonal drama, um,
Well, there's
gold.
the left and there's the left and the right, and this is a whole. You got to understand this is in 1939. This is not like a modern day political allegory. This is a
Yeah,
historical period piece. So you had the left, you had the fascist right that was taking over the country in a civil war, and the left were called the Reds, and like the communists or the socialists or whatever you want to. It's Democrats, democratic,
yeah,
democracy kind of wielding, left wing party, and the fascists were just kind of authoritarian at this point, much like they were in Italy and Germany. And
yeah,
the so his father was a red, and then he was killed in the war. That's all we know.
yeah. And it's important to note that most of the people at this orphanage who run
Yeah,
it are as well,
yeah,
um, which comes into play later in the film, quite
yeah,
quite impactfully. Um, you know what? Let's talk about characters because I think
yeah.
a couple ones that really stand out to me, and what made this movie work the way they were Professor. What's his name? Oh, it's
Oh, the old man.
the old man. Yes, old man.
Oh, I
I'm so
can't
bad
remember.
with names in movies. It's
I'm bad with
terrible.
names, especially Spanish names.
Yeah,
I know the ghost is Santi. Santi.
Santi is the boy. Yeah, yeah, which everybody's kind of
So
afraid of.
Santi, we see it in the first scene. Santi was killed and drowned. That's the first scene of the movie.
Yeah, I don't think we know that was Jacinto. I think it's how you pronounce his
Right. We
name.
don't know exactly who did it at the time.
But we know it happened. We know
Yeah.
it traumatized the
Yeah.
other boy, the one who initially starts as a bully, more
Yep.
or less, for good reason. And that's also when the bomb drops. And then as this monologue is going on, and you get to see this conversation kind of unfold between,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, the professor is, I think, the key of this movie to me.
Yeah.
It,
It's great.
he's great. He's a very literary sort of character, which is there's references to Shakespeare, I believe, at one point where he's talking
Hmm.
about, or he's doing a monologue through the wall to Carmen, uh, and he's also the one who really saves the day later on as well, or at least gives the boys enough time to get ready,
Yeah.
more or less.
Absolutely. I think it's Ayala was the guy's
Uh,
name,
Ayala. Okay.
or Alaya.
Yeah.
Ayala.
Alaya. Something like that. uh,
But this but by the way, this movie is gorgeous. Like it is so if you think Del Toro, like if you've seen Pan's Labyrinth or Hellboy or Pacific Rim or Nightmare Alley or any of his movies, they're all a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful movies, right? This is his cinematographer Guillermo Navarro worked on this movie as well. They've been working on all of his stuff. So
Yeah, there are very striking shots. The shots that I love in films in general is when it's
yep,
pulled way back with people in a
yep.
flat spot with like, there's the car and there's the kid and
Oh, I love it.
yeah, yeah. I
And the,
noticed that
and,
the
and the
opening
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
there's an opening shot that's kind of paralleled later on when Jacinto's lady or lady
Yeah,
meets them on the road when they're embracing because he stabbed her.
right, right.
That's parallel to something from earlier in the film.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Um,
Absolutely. It's a lot of parallels.
yeah.
Well, the one of my favorite parts of this movie is the camera. For some reason, it just when Del Toro does the shots of the main square, like there's the whole movie centers around the bomb, and then around the bomb, there's like the orphanage where the children sleep, where the two characters make love. Then there's like the cistern where the boy was killed, and all of these things are kind of like around the bomb. And there's always
Yeah.
these like dramatic sweeping camera shots through the main square into the door and out the door back through past the bomb, and like it's very operatic and like poetic camera work. It's so nice.
Yeah, it's also nice because a lot of films you don't necessarily know where everything is when it's happening,
Right.
but with this one you really understand the layout of this place.
Hmm.
Um,
It's
even
beautiful.
shots through the wall where for example, when I was talking about the professor or doctor professor, anyway, he's
Yeah.
putting his he's doing that monologue and camera pans over to show on the other side of the wall where Carmen is.
Hmm.
Oh, they're right next to each other, which does come back later in the film too.
Hmm. Yeah.
um, in a unfortunate scene.
Yeah. I mean,
For the
this
poor.
movie's hard. This movie's graphic. It's a horror. It's a dark. I think it's rated R, right? It has to be.
Yeah,
Um,
I would assume so.
and if in Pan's Labyrinth, he also does really graphic stuff. Like the guy gets his mouth slit open with a knife. Like it's disgusting. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the one eyed, or like the creature with like with the eyes
yeah,
on his
the thing in his
hands.
hand one.
He
Yeah,
like eats the fairies and just like blood's pouring out of their bodies and stuff. Like it's Del Toro does not hold back with the gore and the violence.
yeah. There was
It's
one point where I
poetic.
noticed that it did feel like he held back,
Yeah,
and that was when the people were being executed. Um, you
right.
see, there's the initial shot, but then you don't see the rest of them because that's not the point of the scene. I think the point of the scene is, oh, we're in trouble. This
Yeah,
is going to come to us soon.
yeah. That was more of like setting up the doctor, the old man, to be kind of paranoid, and then in his situation. Now he does do a scene like that in Pan's Labyrinth, and they show a guy get shot in the face for no reason, and it's disgusting. Actually,
Yeah.
I think he held his hand up and they shoot him through his hand into his face. It's disgusting. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like poetic gore, if that makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
it's
It's very
necessary for the
yeah,
macabre like
it
aspect of
serves a
yeah.
purpose, like all of it does.
Yeah.
It's not like it's casual. Like a Saw sequel or something.
Hmm.
It's all intentional. I
Of
guess
course.
that's a decent segue into Santi, the boy himself.
Hmm.
There were certain points where I thought the visual effects kind of aged poorly, but then there was a lot where it really held up. It's a very, I'd say, unique look for a ghost.
Yeah,
Um,
very
it's
unique.
and
And they
that might
show
just
it.
be a cultural thing. I don't know.
Well, they show the whole it's not like the ghost is in might not exist. Like it
Yeah,
it's just it presents itself to all different people. It talks to the people. All the kids have heard the voices, and they halfway through the movie you've seen the entire, like right behind me, this
yeah,
picture, you've seen it. It's not like trying to hide it the whole movie and for like shock value or something.
Yeah, it's
It's
actually almost it's in the film earlier than that even.
yeah,
When he's meeting his I think it's Owl and I forgot the other kid. But when he's meeting them, there's a
yep,
shot through the window.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah,
Um,
and it's a great look. It's an iconic um, character, I think. Senti, the ghost.
yeah. I like it when a ghost is designed like this, where it references the way it died,
Yeah.
so to speak. With the blood coming out of the head, that's a really great effect.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's great, and
awesome.
you can see why the kids would be afraid of it, even if they know who Santi is, the
Of
devil's friend
course,
bone.
I
I
would
see.
be. I mean, if I was a kid and I saw Ghost, even though this kid is way more
He,
sympathetic than,
it's
you know what I mean?
funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a strange comparison, but I actually kept thinking of H.P. Lovecraft, like what he was supposed to be like in real life. I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
yeah, which is a
Yep.
strange comparison, but still, it's something that comes to mind, and it's roughly literally in line,
Yeah.
um, but it might just be because the connection of a horror thing that's saying something more than just what the
Mhm.
horror is itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Flaccid. Good to see you,
Oh, Flaccid, what's
Flaccid
going on, buddy?
Phoenix. Yeah.
Hi, Flaccid. Yeah, so I wanted to bring something else up. This is interesting. So this movie was his like first big movie. I think he did he do Mimic before this?
Yeah, but for obvious reasons, that probably doesn't count in his mind.
Yeah, I like Mimic, but it's just not.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I think this is a brilliant movie. I don't know. This is like a perfect ghost story. It's one of my favorites.
yeah. I mean, look, I'm not somebody who really watches any of these, as I've said before, but this stands up really well.
Yep,
It conveys the exact same feeling of reading a good gothic novel, which is exactly
absolutely.
what you'd hope for something like this.
Yeah,
Um,
allegory and now I was going to bring this up. So the Devil's Backbone was essentially not a it's I would say it's influenced by another very very good Spanish film called Spirit of the Beehive. Have you heard of this one? I don't know if this
no,
came
I've
up in
not.
your research. Um, the Spirit of the Beehive is a 1973 Spanish allegory on the Franco fascist regime, and I think this takes place about 10 years before The Devil's Backbone.
Hmm.
But it's a masterpiece. It's one of the best films I've ever seen in my life, and it's very 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 similar. Deals with children who are being, I think, an orphanage. Actually, I think it's also an orphanage.
No,
Um,
interesting.
and instead of a ghost story, this one is more like it's almost like now the kids in this movie are in Spirit of the Beehive are obsessed with the story of Frankenstein because they watch a 1930s like silent version of the movie in their orphanage
Oh,
and they think it's
okay.
real. And this like vagabond from the war comes to their town, and some of them kind of think it might be Frankenstein, and like there's this very creepy aesthetic to the film, and it's very 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 similar, and I know he was influenced by it. Actually, I think I have it right here. Victor Erice is the director. Erice's work on the film would eventually influence the work of Guillermo del Toro on Devil's Backbone and Pan's Labyrinth, particularly the reoccurring idea of children believing in and acting on beliefs about imaginary worlds around the Spanish Civil War.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So, if you like this movie, I highly recommend The Spirit of the Beehive. It's beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll have to check it out. I mean, it
Hmm.
looks. I even like the poster for it, as simple as it is. There's something about
Hmm.
those '70s kind of.
Yeah.
I would almost say medical. The way they they produce things, it's
Yeah.
very clean lines, and I don't know with the poster. I like that.
Yeah. It's
But
great.
another film that in my research that it seemed like he would say connected to this one is Pan's Labyrinth because
Yes.
they have a similar rhythm to them. I think is how he put it.
Hmm.
Um, So I'll have to watch. And he said you should watch them together, actually, which I have not done. I probably should have.
Oh, have you not
Yeah.
seen Pan's Labyrinth?
Not yet.
Oh, it's it's so good, guys. It's one of my favorite movies. It's
I like
so
I
good.
know the general like iconic stuff from it, but I have not seen it.
I love when people haven't seen like amazing movies because then I'm just like I get hyped.
Yeah, that's the reason I started this channel. Honestly, I love sharing that kind of stuff with people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
love
yeah,
that.
I'll have to watch that too. There's a big list. You know, it's one of those things when you're a film student or a
Yep,
film dropout where somebody will just say, "Oh, you haven't seen this?" I'm like, "No, but there's thousands of movies. I
I
haven't
know.
seen all of them."
There's hundreds of thousands of movies.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I haven't seen. Well, what haven't I seen? I've only seen one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Haven't seen any of the sequels. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
even within the horror genre, which I'm obsessed with, I haven't seen a lot. You know, I've seen a lot, but I don't love the slasher genre, so maybe that's why I've kind of avoided most of the Friday
Yeah.
the 13th like franchise except the first one.
I don't like what you know what's referred to as like torture porn. I'm like I don't know. I
Yeah,
feel like there's enough human misery for me to not in real life. It's kind of like why I stopped watching Attack on Titan after a while, or like The Walking Dead. I'm like I don't know. I think I'm sad enough as it is.
right. Yeah. Flaccid, you have to watch this. It's fantastic. It's amazing. Um, yeah, I think Mexican and Spanish cinema is something I would like to dive into more. I've dabbled a little bit here and there. Like Spirit of the Beehive is one of my favorite movies. There's another one called there's another director called Carlos Saura,
So,
who has done a couple fantastic movies. Um, one of them is about cancer, and it's also somewhat of a metaphor. And
hmm.
he just has like really good music in his films. That one is called boy, why am I forgetting the name of it? Cria Cuervos.
Oh, okay.
Um,
For some reason, I feel like I've heard about the film Flamenco, but
Flamenco. Yeah, well,
yeah,
that
that's a.
maybe
I mean,
that's
that's a general term, but
yeah, it
for
could be
a
from
type of
something,
dance.
but that is one of his
Yeah,
more popular ones.
yeah.
But yeah, that Spanish cinema and then Mexico has done a lot of good. Like I mean, you have Alfonso Cuarón and
Yeah.
Alejandro Inarritu all came out of Mexico around the same time Del Toro did. And I remember they were all winning Academy Awards roughly around the same time with like Pan's Labyrinth and then Children of Men with Cuarón. And then with Inarritu, he did like Amores Perros. I think, what did Cuarón do? A lot of them
Hmm.
are doing Hollywood stuff now. They're not really doing Mexican cinema.
Yeah, that's interesting how that works out. Maybe it's just Hollywood goes, "Oh, look, you did something interesting. Come direct my my superhero
Yeah.
movie." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like every Marvel director
Well, to be
ever.
fair, they're doing original stuff. I mean, he did Children of Men, then he did Gravity, which is like an original movie,
Oh
and
yeah, I forgot about Gravity. That's been a
then
while.
he did do Harry Potter. Alfonso Cuarón, he did that Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, that you
Um,
know, there's another one I have not watched any of.
oh, okay, they're
Literally
good. They're
none.
good.
I think you're starting to get an understanding of my family upbringing, maybe.
Oh boy, oh boy, this is the devil's movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy, oh god.
But that's fine. Oh yeah, I guess back to the movie. We talked about the doctor. Talked about
Yep,
Santi. Uh, Jacinto is probably the other pillar of this film. I would
of
say.
course, of course.
Um, in fact, he's really tragic in a way. It seems like at the end of the film, he's starting to come to some sort of a realization just in time to be stabbed to death with sticks and drowned.
Yeah, I mean, he's given up his humanity, and he's just kind of realizing it at the. But
Yeah, specifically for the picture of his family. It's like, oh, I
yeah.
moved a little bit here. That's why I'm blurry. It's like almost like implying that he was almost a ghost there in a way. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
he's just caught on the camera. Um, he's looking for the gold of the orphanage, which I guess we haven't really touched on a lot. But there is gold of the orphanage, which is for the Reds, but they want it because it's money, obviously. Just
Yeah.
like him and his two assistants or cronies or just like partners in crime. They're not really subservient to him. So one's called Pig, fittingly.
Right. And
Scary
like,
man.
the movie it is painting, fascism as rightfully so, as like, evil. but it doesn't really deal with that much. It's more about the humanity of the people within within the orphanage, and trying to grapple with the, like, just the constant fear of death, and
Yeah,
and and and,
it's
and
backdrop.
Jacinto is not even, a fascist, but he is also painted as like this sort of evil presence that can't doesn't go away the whole movie.
Yeah,
um
and obviously they cast a relatively like good looking man, I'd say, to kind of give you
yep.
a different idea about him initially, maybe. Um, as filmmakers are wont to do. You think, oh, maybe he's just tough on the kids or something, and then you realize, oh, he is, but then he killed a kid with that early
Yeah.
on, and buried and hit his body in a pool. Maybe that was a line too far. I don't know.
Not even a pool, it was like
Yeah,
a shithole.
yeah. It's possibly the worst place to have as your final resting spot.
Yeah.
um, yeah, the Dr. Carmen is also. I think the love interests are a little underspoken, except for the Jacintos, just
Yeah.
because she gets her moment to go out and she doesn't die in a terrible way. She dies in a way that
Yeah.
lets her character have a good deal of respect left.
It's so tragic. This movie is so
Yeah,
sad. um
I'd actually consider it less of a horror and more of a tragedy. Like,
yeah, of course.
that's gothic horror, I guess,
Well, I
but
mean,
still.
it's like, what do you how do you how would you describe Macbeth, Shakespeare's Macbeth? It's horror, but it's like, you know it's a tragedy.
Yeah,
The rise and fall of a man. And well, it has those horror elements, right? Like with the witches and the betraying and the killing and all that. But like, it's just a Shakespearean tragedy,
yeah. It's all character based, and
Mhm.
that's what really makes a film like this work over other horror films that maybe would try to tackle the same idea.
Yeah.
Um, let's see.
Yeah, I love that.
Something. This is kind of jumping around, but that's just kind of how it is with this kind of conversation.
Mhm.
Um, I like the sound design a lot in this film. It's very understated and naturalistic.
Uh-huh.
There's not a lot of instrumentation, not a lot of music, so that when it does come in, you know it's there for a reason. Like, oh, the tension here. He's the ghost. What's going on with this? It's that kind of thing where during day to day life in the film, the music isn't there, so you kind of know that heightened reality is coming around.
Mhm. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Um,
music. I like the music in this movie.
yeah. What's there is good. Is good.
Yeah, it's subtle. It's haunting, and yeah, this is just a gorgeous movie. And I watched it on ultra high definition on Amazon. I don't know about you.
Mm. Um,
I
I
couldn't.
watched it in
Oh.
4K on my. You can kind of see it back there.
Oh.
And it's an OLED. It's one of those LG OLEDs. So like when it was pitch black outside in some of the spots, it was great. Um,
Nice.
you should watch it if you have an OLED. Watch like a black and white horror film on it. It's like actual ghosts on the screen. It's great.
I have a QLED or whatever that's called. Samsung. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is roughly. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you're a huge technical snob, it's not
Right.
really going to matter too much for most people.
Yeah. I wish I had a bigger library, physical library. I thought I had this movie, and I was looking up for the director's commentary because I really want to watch
Yeah.
that, but I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I was gonna order the physical copy, but it wouldn't get here in time, so I just had to get it digitally.
Yep.
Which is fine. It's nice to have that on the Voodoo account or whatever.
Yep. It's free on Amazon, everybody. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free. You can just watch it.
Oh, it's free on Prime. Well,
Yep.
that's fine. I'd like. Oops, but that's fine. I'd like to own this one.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. I actually just got a week subscription to Prime anyway.
Nice.
Okay, well, good timing on my part.
That
But
happens.
yeah, no, it's worth getting. It's well worth watching.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's the start of his like trilogy, if you want to call it that, of the Spanish Civil War. So there's Pan's Labyrinth, and then Pinocchio. Well, actually, Pinocchio is more about the Italian fascist like side of the war.
Mm,
But have you seen Pinocchio?
not yet.
Oh,
I
it's
keep.
great.
Yeah, I've heard it's really good. I've heard it's the best iteration of it.
Do
Which I
do
imagine.
yeah, do the well the Disney one's really good. I love it, but
Yeah,
the original, not the new one.
I
Like
just assumed.
yeah. Um, but no, do you you should just do Pan's Labyrinth and Pinocchio as your like next two in your spare time. I'm
Yeah,
telling you, it would be so worth the like the triple feature like experience because you will be like, wow, there are some major aesthetic and like thematic threads throughout all of these films, and it'll just make you enjoy them more.
yeah, I think I will. I was actually considering doing Pan's Labyrinth on my next one, not the one next week, but the week after when it's just me.
Gotcha.
That'd be great. I think kind of continue this and explore Del Toro's work a little bit more.
What
Uh,
do you think about the author of a film or the what do you think about the auteur theory? If you've
oh, you mean
or
of
you're
just there being like the one person instead of like the crowd based? Uh,
yeah, it's almost like well, different uh, there's different like critical analysis approaches to film, and like one of them would be postmodernism, which is the film is whatever I feel like it means,
yeah,
or
yeah,
whatever I decide. Like, oh, this is clearly the Matrix is a trans allegory. It's like, well, nah, it's actually not. Like,
no,
just because you're a postmodernist, like, doesn't mean that like you can tell everybody else what it's about.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's another interesting intersection with this auteur theory too, because didn't one of the Wachowskis themselves say it was supposed to be a trans allegory, but like 20 years later after the
20 years
fact?
later, and
Yeah, what?
originally he said she
Uh,
said originally that it wasn't about that, and it was if anything was in if there was any trans allegory
yeah,
stuff in the film, it was all subconscious. They said this in an interview. They
yeah.
said this.
They rallied it, I guess, is the way
Yeah,
to put it.
it's more a straight up simulation theory. Uh, what if scenario, right? Or like
Yeah.
or the Plato's allegory of the cave, which is another
Oh yeah.
generic, universally well known philosophical concept
Yeah.
or
The cave,
thought
exactly.
experiment.
But yeah, no, I think I like to think of films in that way. That's why I think it's why directors are still important. I think the general
Yeah,
populace still thinks of films with auteur theory, even if people try to put like a postmodernist spin on film and film discussion. The
yeah.
average person doesn't care, and I don't think they
No,
ever will.
and they're grossed out by it half the time. It's like, well, this movie is actually about anti-capitalism. It's like, no, it isn't.
No,
No,
it's
it's not. Maybe for
yeah, yeah.
you.
Maybe for them, and it is like you got to talk about the death of the author a little bit, I guess. But
Yes.
but but at the same point, or to continue like a discussion, it's not like that's it's not like the author's original intent just goes away when
Right.
when a film is released or a novel is written. It's still there, even if the audience doesn't necessarily see it the same way.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's why I love Del Toro because somebody like him, you can tell, you can just see a Del Toro movie. It's a Del Toro movie when you're watching it. You're like, you just see all of the threads throughout his entire career. Same with Tarantino and other directors like Christopher Nolan and David Fincher and like you
yeah,
know and I'm just naming very popular directors, but
but
like Paul
still, I
Thomas
mean,
Anderson.
yeah, they're good. They're good examples for the average person.
Yep,
So
yep, absolutely.
yeah, and I'm kind of anti that snobby kind of
Yeah,
mindset of I gotta talk about film with very specific obscure examples that only other film people will like. I'm like,
right.
what's the point? I mean,
Depends on
like
your audience.
it depends on the
Yeah,
audience. I'm kind of like in the middle. I like to think of myself as a smart dumb guy.
that's
I've always yeah.
that's great. That's what I do.
Yeah, I always surrounded myself with people smarter than me. In years, the gap has widened, I suppose. But
Yeah, it's
it's
like I know I'm not a normie, but I also am not. I don't have the hubris to consider myself like a cinema expert, scholar. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
whatever the hell people think. I know people who've seen 6,000 movies in their life.
yeah,
I have about almost 2,000. Probably I've seen based on my letterboxed.
Yeah,
Maybe
roughly.
1500, but I've seen probably at least 500 more that I haven't logged. But like, you know what I mean? Like I know people who watch a movie a day and like they're watching shit from like Romania and just like I've never seen, and I'm just like, well, I would like to get into Romanian cinema and like explore, because a lot of it's like world history and
Yeah,
like, you know,
yeah.
it's awesome. It's like I want to, you know, I respect those people, but
I do. Yeah, most people don't have the time for it, and I
no,
think that's the thing. Maybe someday I'll be a film snob. This ever takes off, I'll be able to just sit there and watch films every single day. But for the most part, that's not how it works. Which is why I would actually recommend this movie to people. I
yeah,
want you to know that this one's good. You can go watch this one. You don't have to like worry about not getting it, because I think what's there, even without going into the themes, is good.
it's
Um,
fantastic. It's a great
but if
genre
you
movie. Yep,
Yeah, but if you understand the subtext of it, it becomes an even better movie.
yep,
Um, let's
yeah,
see.
it's a good genre one.
Uh, I usually talk about favorite scenes in the film. Is there anything that
Mhm.
stands out to you?
Oh yeah.
Uh, I was gonna
Pro-
say.
yeah, definitely the big the big explosion and the aftermath
Yeah,
of that
that's
is
what I was gonna mention
haunting.
too. Yeah,
It's up there with some of the best like war films I've ever seen, in terms of like the you're just sitting there watching this horror unfold at the end of the movie, and you're just like, well,
yeah.
fuck, that's real. That's not a ghost story. You know, this is not fun anymore.
No,
Yeah.
man. When the doctor has like blood pouring out of his ear, but he
Yep.
still gets up because he needs to, because he's the one who's supposed to be saving things, so to speak. Like he
Oh
knows it.
yeah.
Like he knows he has to do
And
it.
he can't hear anymore. Yeah.
They can't hear anymore. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I love that character. Like he's great. Um,
Yep.
he's a good role model for a lot of guys. I have to say. I think.
Definitely. I
Yeah.
also liked any of the stuff with like the orphans.
Yeah.
They were so they were so good, and they're just like great child actors. Like this is what I say a lot about Hollywood. Hollywood has a hard time with like child actors, and a lot of the times it's either the writing or the way they coach them, but they're
Yeah.
not
I think it's
realistic.
coaching.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
just not realistic. And in this movie, you know, it was a Mexican film, and it just felt like regular Mexican kids, you know, like they did an excellent job of not overhamming it for the screen or being more scared than they probably would be in real life. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
you see a movie with kids and there's like it's a ghost story or whatever, and the kids are like screaming at the top of their lungs, and like it's just like unrealistic, you know.
Yeah.
I
Actually,
like
I had a bit of a theory on why a lot of directors are unable to properly coach kids, and I think it's just because they did a lot of the people who are in Hollywood didn't really live a lot of a real life before, so to speak, like a life that a normal kid would live. A lot of them were more upper class or more privileged, maybe,
yeah.
and so what's normal to them, like, oh, I was a very articulate kid, but
Yep.
not every kid is like that, and in fact, most kids are not like that. So I think maybe that's where it's coming from. It's like, well, I was like this as a kid, but most people weren't.
Yeah, that's true.
Who knows? But that's always been what I thought about that. It's like they're trying. It's like it's George Lucas. Not so good
Exactly.
at that. I'll try spinning. That's a neat trick. um, but
Absolutely.
yeah, that scene is great. I really like the scene where they confront Jacinto in
Oh
and where
yeah,
he dies. Just like the
amazing.
visceralness of like the stick spears, which was a callback to earlier in the film when they're talking about mammoths, of course.
Yes, yeah. There's
Yeah,
so much of that. I mean, we didn't even get to the devil's backbone part of it with the
yeah, which
baby,
is
the
the whole
dead
point of the
babies
thing.
the dead babies in the aged rum in the containers with the back exposed,
Yeah,
and it's like, and then the mammoth, the oh, there was something in the beginning that was like a metaphor for something I can't remember. But yeah, there's so much
uh,
going on.
there is. It's constant. I was actually reading a few contemporary reviews at the time, and some of them were seemed to be a little overwhelmed by how much was going on.
Yeah.
One of them described it as being a dizzying experience, but well worth watching, which I guess is fair enough. Um,
Oh man.
it's like, I don't get what's going on, but I like it, I guess, which is fair enough.
Yeah, I guess. I picked up on
I
that.
got it. Like, I don't know. I didn't think it was that crazy, but maybe I was a guy who had to watch a lot of films all at once. Like, I do not envy somebody who is like I have to watch every movie that comes out in theaters and talk
Uh,
about it.
that's
That
what I
would make
wanted to do. I went
Yeah.
to school for that, sadly.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
was like, I'm
I
gonna be a
considered it.
movie critic. And I was like, halfway through my studies, I was like, wait a minute, does that mean I have to go see
Every
I
movie.
have to go see like fucking Minions? And like
Yeah.
I have to talk about it? Oh no. I'd rather
Yeah,
be
that's basically what stopped me too, to be
yeah.
honest. I went more into the production side of things when I went to film school.
Yeah.
More, but as I said, dropped out, so I got my money's worth. No debt, hooray! But yeah, let's see. Is there anything else worth talking about here? I'm gonna check my list. Is there anything that comes to mind for you that you want to mention before?
Oh man. I I just another movie that if you guys like The Orphanage, you'll probably like this one. The Orphanage is also a Spanish horror film. Ghost
Hmm.
story. Takes place in an orphanage. Um that was oh boy.
Who was? Yeah.
That was what's his face? J.A. Bayona. So J.A. Bayona is a Spanish filmmaker. 2007. Gothic supernatural horror movie. And he ended up Bayona is now, just like Del Toro doing Jurassic Park, Fallen Kingdom, and he's doing
Oh.
big movies. He did the first 2 episodes of Rings of Power. He directed those.
Hmm.
He did Fall. Have you seen A Monster Calls?
I have not seen A
Fantastic
Monster
movie.
Calls.
Brilliant movie.
You saying that he did the first 2 episodes of Rings of Power,
Yeah,
I would say if he's the guy who directed the opening montage of
he
that,
did.
then because that was maybe the only part I really liked about it. But I'm more of a
Well,
book snob,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
we
no,
don't need
the
to talk
first
about
2
it. But
episodes were so much better than the rest of the show, visually, in my opinion. And then it
yeah,
just got
I agree.
really bad.
I
Yeah,
I don't want to talk about that kind of
I don't
stuff a
either.
ton, but I will say those first 2 episodes were better than everything that came afterwards.
Yeah,
Which is I had a little bit of hope, and then I went, okay.
yeah. But no, Bayona's fantastic. Bayona did the movie called The Impossible with Ewan McGregor. It's about the tsunami in Indonesia. And then I highly
Mm.
recommend that one as well.
Oh yeah, that one.
And
The
The
tsunami. Yeah,
Orphanage.
okay. The Orphanage. Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. Anything last notes I had?
But that's yeah.
I liked generally how they did the stuff leading up to the reveal of the ghost. Specifically, I liked the shadow on the curtain. I know that's something that's been done a few times in a few movies, but showing the shadow on the curtain, then pulling it aside and showing nothing was
Yeah.
there is effective.
Yeah, it is.
Let's see.
And
And then also just yeah, no, go ahead. No,
well, the metal like scissors and metallic like knives and shit hanging from the ceiling, and then it falls over, and all these like creepy sound effects, and yeah.
yeah, and the footsteps in the water.
Mhm.
It's like that's why the ghost was doing that in the first place. And,
Oh, I loved when the kid was going to confront the ghost down in that that room where he died.
yeah,
He saw blood in the air, and he reached and he like touched the blood that was in
and
the air, and has got his hands bloody, and it was like just a really cool visual effect.
yeah. It was it was generally following how a lot of people have described. Well, as much as you can
Mhm.
believe them, but like how
Right.
people would describe how their hauntings happened.
Yep.
I like it when it's in line with some aspect of reality or unreality or whatever you'd like to say.
Mhm.
Let's see. Another thing I noticed there's like just interesting commentary about the war. Like, what's a Chinese man and a Canadian
Right.
man doing in a Spanish war?
Right.
That line was great. Um,
Yep.
that's just what war was like. It's an interesting change of how war became kind of very, very, like it was international in the first place, but then you don't. That was a squadron made up of 4 different countries, uh, of
Yep.
people from 4 different countries. So it's just not much to say about it other than that's just interesting commentary on the transition of that, um, to what we
Also,
have today.
we didn't talk about no. It's called Devil's Backbone for a reason. Basically, these like fetuses that are like not aborted, but like they're dead from like
Yeah,
spina bifida or some kind of spinal disease, um, and they're preserved in like this spiced rum called limbo water.
yeah,
And the doctor was basically selling this stuff to help fund the school, from what I understand. That's why this
yeah.
is called the Devil's Backbone, or that's why the movie's called the Devil's Backbone.
I would love it. The school was called the Devil's Backbone.
Yeah,
I'll send the kids there. No, but yeah, that's interesting commentary in of itself. And the scene where that was revealed, where he was trying to convince Carlos to it's just your imagination. Don't worry about it. It's like, look, if you believe in all this superstition, then you should be fine drinking this, right?
right. And it's like it's kind of just metaphorical for like the loss of innocence with with the fetus and the fact that adults are taking advantage of that innocence and profiting off of it and killing children and all. There's so much going on with it, but like that's kind of just a creepy visual way of like preserving that metaphor throughout
yeah.
the movie. Yeah.
Then I just thought it was interesting. The doctor ends the scene by drinking it himself.
Yeah.
It communicates.
Disgusting.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah. Besides that, I nothing else off the top of my head that's that
Yeah.
we should cover about it. I'd recommend it. Go and watch it. If it's free on Prime, you should really go and watch it if you have it. That's great. I should have watched it on there. Although
Right.
I will say, I know Prime sometimes gets weird details wrong, like color grading and things like that.
Oh
It's
no.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm not. Yeah, I noticed that every once in a while. So, but it did. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just looking at it quickly, it didn't seem like it looks like it was off. But still, I'm always a little iffy because Amazon just like puts content on there, just shoves it out
I
there.
know. Well, HBO, they all do it. HBO had
Yeah.
that one famous, Game of Thrones episode that nobody could see.
Oh, and then the Disney Plus cropped The Simpsons the wrong way,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you
yeah.
couldn't see some of the jokes.
Yeah, yeah.
That was funny. But yeah, all right. Well, it's good talking to you about this. I think it's been a good time. I don't have yeah. Thanks for stopping by. I know you're definitely the bigger channel here, but where can people find you?
Loftipixels on YouTube and Twitter.
Twitter. Yeah.
Yep.
You've been doing streams on Fridays mostly.
Well,
think.
I am so all over the place. I'm trying to get it down to. I'm trying to. It's hard because when I try to get guests on my show, like kind of like what you're doing here, and it's like I have to just whenever they're available. I can't really pick a day, but I want to do Thursdays or Mondays. I'm trying to settle it down. Pick a day.
Yeah, that makes sense. Getting guests is tough.
Yeah.
But hey, so thanks for stopping by. I was like, I think I could have a good conversation with you about this film, about film in general, because you seem to have a similar outlook on a lot of these, which is, I know we're relatively controversial with some people, but it doesn't matter so much. I don't think it.
Yeah, I'm controversial in that I like movies and other people like to hate on movies.
Yeah, Avatar: Way of Water was actually good. Writing was a little iffy, but doesn't matter because that's not the point. I'm just gonna put that out there.
No, but you know what I mean? There's a lot of people who complain about how bad movies are, but they won't watch stuff like this. And I'm just like, well, maybe you should just either you don't like movies and you're not really a fan of movies, or you're being a hypocrite. Like, go watch this movie. It's a fantastic movie. Go watch go watch Pinocchio. I know it's a modern day new reboot, but you know what? It's excellent. It exists, guys. Some of this stuff exists. You
can follow directors you like. They'll recommend things a lot of the time too. And their content is usually good.
Exactly.
But yeah. I don't know. I like the idea of creating a little more, I don't know, hopeful environment for film. Yeah. I know a lot of it sucks. Look, it's obvious. A lot of it is really terrible, but it's not all bad, right? We've got good stuff. No. There's great stuff, and then you can go back almost 100 and something years, depending on when you want to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I I think that about wraps up the stream. I will play the little outro and end the stream, then we'll guess say goodbye to you behind the
Bye
scenes. So
bye. See
yeah,
you.
thanks for stopping by, everybody. Stay copacetic.